We are live. All right,
We
episode
are.
2. Hi.
What's going on, man?
Uh-oh, the Discord's going off. Um,
So always is.
yeah, I don't know. It's been a pretty good week, episode 2, just in the nick of time. There's been a lot going on and really nothing if you consider it's just sports. But yeah, we've gotten some EPL plays and
Yeah, EPL was pretty solid today. Well,
I
why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Nick?
Well, I've don't you when you have somebody telling you about acronyms, you really maybe have spent too much time in the lab. And sometimes sometimes I do feel like, you know, this is a fascinating industry, sports betting, and like this whole social because
Say the least.
I was kind of just going by what we talked about last week. Like where we are in the industry is so fascinating because I'm seeing all these people on social media putting down bets into sports books. Like so and so just bet 2,000 on Utah State to win it all. And yeah, and it's like, and I do think there's this Bengals effect or whatever you want to call it because there's this added benefit now of posting your ticket on social media, which I
Right.
think is recent. And I think you post your ticket on social media and it goes viral. And what does that mean for sports books? How are are they just cashing it in or are they just I don't know. I saw some NASCAR. Did you see that NASCAR ticket that was posted? Of
No,
course, I'm like, did you see that NASCAR ticket that was posted?
I didn't. What was it?
So some dude bet $12.48. Of course, it's like the last of your money in your freaking,
Yeah, yeah.
MGM account to win 998,000 um, on like four parlays, plus 2,200, like four picks, and it was like a plus 2,200, plus 1,800, plus 1,300, plus 900, and all four hit, and it like the parlay was like plus 700 or 7 million something thousand, and of course the ticket was posted, and in this case the guy was well off with $1 million.
Hmm.
But I just don't know where it's all going to go with all our mental health in five in 5 years. It's like but I do think this is an added element that a lot of people aren't.
it's it's the whole social media. I mean, I feel like the books have to be grinning ear to ear with the added element of social media. I mean, everyone wants to for lack of a better wording, to flex their nuts a little bit and be like,
Yeah.
oh my God. It's like those Twitter accounts that I think we've talked about it, before, where it's like the Bengals versus the Rams, in the Super Bowl this year, but like they post every like possible like matchup, and then like it's like a Twitter burner account. And they delete all the other like, whoa, like, look, this guy posted the Super Bowl matchup before the season, like this, and he gets like he's famous for like as they say, the 15 minutes of fame. It's like, oh, cool, bro, like you know,
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like the 15 minutes of fame. It's like inflation. So everybody gets their 15 minutes. Like you're
yeah.
guaranteed now. It's like
Maybe I should try that.
every Tom. Yeah, I mean, it's like everyone's on their phones. Like repost. Let me go to my other three accounts. Like repost, and it's
Yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah. Well, I wonder too if it's one of those, if they're like, okay, like they don't have any followers, and then just put every possible matchup, and then as soon as the matchup is decided, they kind of get it, get everyone to go check this out, man.
Oh, yeah, so we create 10 Twitter accounts. We make 10 crazy predictions, and then the one that hits, that's our brand.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do so that is definitely a thing.
yeah. I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I feel like I feel like there's better ways to make yourself popular. I mean, I can't. I mean, how many? Who's also really going to believe that like you're doing stuff like that on the reg? I
Well,
mean,
suppose well
maybe.
you well self shameless plug for you. You did literally predict 3 baseball games in a row, and then
Well,
Well, no, you're very humble, but you did. You were like, it's going to be either 3-2 or 2-1, or what's that pitcher? You know,
Oh,
Sh-
Alcantara.
the pitcher for the Phillies, he never gets run support. You know,
Oh, Nola.
yeah.
Oh. Well, I mean that. Well, thank you, but that's a little different. That was in our Discord, by the way, for those who I said that that game might be 3-1 or something like that, and I think it was 3-2. But the one with Nola, I said that 3 or 4. I took the Phillies -1.5, and I said that 3 or 4 runs
Hmm.
might still cover the 1.5, and it was 4-0. I mean, that's not as as an astronomical of you know. Rather, it's not as unlikely as picking two Super Bowl
That's true.
participants.
That's
But I
true.
mean, I appreciate the props, but that's sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, I guess. But I mean, also like with the Phillies, I'm at a I've watched the Phillies for so long, and actually, even though for those who may follow me on social media, might have seen my video today that I'm taking a short hiatus. But one game I did was kind of looking at tonight was the Phillies because on Sunday I took the Pirates because the Phillies were rolling right along, and I had a feeling I took the Pirates +1.5 because it was +125. We were still getting plus money on it, but I had a feeling because I took the Pirates money line too on my own because it's just like
Yes.
the thing about it is like I know the Phillies team, and by the way, the Eagles do the same thing, and I'm sure every fan has knows like the nuances of their team, but I've followed the Eagles and the Phillies for so long, and I swear, like without fail, it's like when all when they're rolling along, like I said in that video on Sunday, as soon as there might be a spot where they underperform when they're expected to dominate, and I mean that happens to every
Mm.
team, but I just feel like it's especially pronounced with the Phillies sometimes,
Is
and
that
I knew that was a spot where that could happen,
is that
especially
inherent with
with
champions? Sorry to cut you off.
oh no, wait, what's that?
Is that inherent, you think, with like championship style teams or all professional athletes?
I don't know, and I'm not even sure. I mean, the Phillies are good this year. I mean, I think they'll make the playoffs. My concern with them as a fan is that it seems like every time like a really good pitcher comes around, they just really struggle to hit them. So it's like something's got to change if they're going to make some noise in the postseason. But I mean, I think all teams go through it, and especially like during the NFL season too. It's like teams will play up to the level of their competition a couple games a year, and they'll play down to their competition a couple of games a year. And
Like my
sometimes,
dating life.
yeah, and that's why you see big upsets. That's why you see the Jets beating teams that they shouldn't, or some of the poor teams of the league. Like last year, I remember when the Bengals were rolling along, they beat the Ravens really bad, and then the next game they went and lost to the Jets, and I had a feeling that would happen too, but I stayed away from it because I was like, this seems there. Every team goes through letdown spots. I just feel like with the Phillies, like they have in this example, they often underperform in spots where they're supposed to dominate, and on the other side of the coin, when all the chips are down, like then they'll pull out a win, and the Eagles do the same thing. The Eagles do it all the time. And tonight, it's like okay, they lost to the Pirates on Sunday, and they lost the first 2 games to the Diamondbacks with Ranger Suarez and Nola on the mound, and now Bailey Falter's on the mound, who really isn't. I mean, he's not. I'm not saying he's fantastic, but the Phillies have won a lot of his starts, and like it's just like this will probably be the game that they win. So I might have gone with them today.
Yeah, it's interesting. Do you think that, well, because one of the things I'll try to do, of course, with the algorithm is try to find with data a systematic way of finding letdown situations. So you scan the data and it's like, okay, what does a letdown situation look like with data? So for baseball, for example, is it winning teams that have won 5 in a row that are now on a road trip? Is it winning teams that have won 8 in a row? What's the threshold? Is it statistically significant? Typically, with football, it's an against the spread. If a team has covered the spread, unless you're talking 2008 Patriots, we exclude them from the data set. No, but in general, including that, if a team has covered the spread over 60% of the time and it's week 8, week 9, you can start to fade them, as you
Yeah.
know, but yeah, that's where I'm always fascinated to find these letdown situations. And it's like when you have the Phillies as a letdown situation, then I'm like, well, hey, the data's got I got 2 sets of data here that have 90% confidence
Hmm.
that the Phillies are going to let it down.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, boom.
yeah. Well, that would be an interesting avenue to explore too. I think, kind of like we've talked about on some of our other clips, and maybe in the first episode too, where um, sometimes I'll try to make arguments for like both sides, like, oh, is this a letdown? Like, oh, like I'll say like this is a letdown spot, but and if they lose, like, yeah, it was, but like, was it? Like, or what other elements came into play? I mean, let's look at a game I took last Monday when I took the White Sox and the Royals. I took the Royals money line, and I said they had they were traveling. They got destroyed by the Astros 21-5. They went to Cleveland. There was a rain delay and a rain out, and so that messed with their routine. As because to me in this spot, then they went to Kansas City for a 1-game series, then went right back on the road to Baltimore, and to me it was more like, okay, like from the human, like the human side of things, like
Yeah.
because as fans, it's like they're professional ball players. They're used
No, that
like well,
yeah,
like I don't
yeah.
know about everyone else. I mean, it's not that I don't like to travel or anything, but like if I'm flying a lot, it's like I'm tired.
Yeah.
Like,
And it's less than
especially that
200
far.
miles, they can take a bus.
Yeah, like it's
MLB regulation, if it's less than 200 miles, team can take a bus.
yeah, and I mean, obviously, as much as they travel, they're going to be used to it more than some schmuck like me. But I mean, that's those are things that I personally think should be considered. And in that instance, it worked. I thought that would be a big letdown spot for them, and it was. The Royals won, but I mean, the Royals. It was a tie game, and the Royals pulled away. I believe it was in the eighth. So like it could have gone the other way too, and then it's like, oh, then people could come
Yeah.
and like, oh, why would you take such a bad team? It's like, well, it's just funny how you can dissect things, especially in hindsight, so many different ways, and you can say, oh, it was this, it was that, and I think it's just playing the percentages sometimes as
Yeah.
far as what is most likely. I mean, and this is just my opinion. I don't consider myself to be sharp or anything like that necessarily. It's like I'm just a dude who I think has an eye for a couple things. I mean, sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong.
I'm just a guy. I jump on TikTok. I hit 60% over 100 picks. I
Well, I
don't,
appreciate that, but I wouldn't be like, oh,
no,
I'm really sharp. Like I know what I'm talking about. I mean, I kind of do. You
dude,
know,
you're probably one of the sharpest people on TikTok. And,
I,
that's a compliment, but it's also like, yeah, sure. Are the sharpest people in the world on TikTok? No.
right.
But
Well, and I appreciate that, but it's also, I mean, I make some. I mean, I the first 2 picks I made this week were, I looked pretty dumb, and sometimes and I mean, I guess not every pick can be sharp. I guess
yeah. Well,
maybe,
how
but
to,
I
yeah.
don't. I just think like I'm just a guy who I think I have a decent eye for some things, but there's still so much for me to learn too, of course.
Oh, fair enough. I mean, I think that's an interesting thing I'll do when I make my plays and I go, all right, was this a good play, but it lost? Because you can make a bad bet that wins and you can make
Oh,
a great bet that loses. And
yeah.
so some sort of standard where you can evaluate your play. So somebody in the Discord posted Braves team total over, and I thought it was still a great bet, even in hindsight, because they left 9 or 10 runners in scoring position. And so you can run a data analysis and go, okay, yeah, this was a losing bet, but it was a good bet. It was just
Mhm.
a little unlucky. And I think getting people to think in bets, think in more of like a wave function for the stat for the physics people. It's a wave particle duality. Shit. But yeah, seriously though, yeah, think in bets. Famous poker player, well, infamous and famous poker players. Poker players will do that a lot, so I'll borrow that term. But
Mhm.
I think that's something. And you nailed it. Routine. I mean, yeah, these guys are professional. They know how to travel, but it's kind of like that Field of Dreams game that was kind of wonky. Those teams, anything that breaks the routine, and can we find it? And I think we have a spot I want to try that, where we make 1 or 2 plays a week where we're really digging and we don't even tell each other the plays. And then it's like, here's the algo scan. And you're like, wow, I was going to take this team anyway. Because even on that Kansas City White Sox game, I pulled up the data for it. I mean, what I couldn't filter for a rain out, rain delay, then a 1-game road trip, but I could filter for, hey, days of rest, and I could filter for a rain delay. And sure enough, it was like a thin edge. I mean, it was on the spot. So,
Oh wow.
But yeah, I think in general,
And,
yeah,
I think in one of those spots, I mean, it definitely could have, that still, talking about that Kansas City pick, it still could have gone sour. I mean, I
yeah,
think it's one, like I said, it's playing the percentages. You know, if Team A is superior to Team B, but if Team B were to beat Team A, this is their best chance in this spot. And another one was, I actually haven't done an extra quacky pick in a long time, but the last one I did a couple weeks ago was the Nationals against Syndergaard in his first game against the
I
Phillies, and
remember
he gave
that.
up what was it, like 11 hits and 4 runs and and it was a rain shortened game.
That was
Now the rest of that series, the Phillies absolutely destroyed the Nationals, and I expected them to,
yeah,
as they should. I mean, the disparity of the talent on the two teams. But I thought in that first game, and I think we got hosed pretty bad, but because they called it early after I think it was 4.5 innings.
yeah,
So I had to take it as a loss. But it's like kind of just like I was just saying, like if there was a spot where the Nationals were going to beat the Phillies, it was in that game. Now whether it would have happened or not, that game we don't know. But I mean, it was 5-4. I believe it
yeah.
was it was either 5-4 or 6-5. It was ended up being the final. But the Nats were within 1 run. So, but the rest of the games were like 9-2 and like 11-3, and it wasn't even close.
And you're not calling, yeah. And I think that's a good call out for people to realize is like, I think people, and even me, I consider myself pretty good at math, but sometimes it's hard to judge. You internalize percentages day in and day out. You're betting games. You see a minus 140. It feels right. Feels good. They're gonna win. Well, what does that feeling or that conviction relate to? Does it relate to a 62% win rate? You know what I mean? And it's
Mhm.
like that's why, like, I think going back to these crazy parlays that people are hitting, I actually do think the sports books are in options trading. It's called like it's a normal distribution of a Black-Scholes model, and some of them have fat tails, and that was just a lot. That was a lot, but basically meaning it's really hard to price things on the edges. And so when you have these crazy parlays hitting, it's like the sports books, I actually think, do have some exposure in these crazy markets like NASCAR,
Mhm.
where insider driving
Insider driving.
I actually think there was some insider driving on that, dude,
Oh,
for sure. I don't know. I mean, it's like
that's
uh
the first I've heard of that.
insider driving, but yeah, I mean, I think in tying it back, I think there's always a self-selection too on social media. I think we're gonna always have this as like an underlying subtle theme with like breaking down games. I think but do you see anything in week one, just pivoting quickly before we're going to keep this one a little shorter tonight? Do you see anything in week one that just jumps out in terms of NFL that you're just kind of like, you've already even bet maybe on the lines that are out?
I've got a couple of games already on my radar. I've narrowed it down to about 6 or 7 that I really like.
Follow
Um,
at Quacky Takes to see the plays, and
yeah,
then
yeah, and I don't, I haven't taken anything yet just because, especially, I mean, the preseason games are over, but anything could happen in practice with an injury or something, and especially you never know what's going to happen over the last couple. Like, oh, the COVID list, something happened. Now all of a sudden, this player's out. Or
COVID, that's a thing. Oh yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
apparently. But there are a couple games that are on my radar, and I'll talk about them in detail. I think next time. But
Fair enough. I tried to squeeze it out. Well, I want to give a quick plug to kind of something is Lord Maximus, who's been doing a
yeah, the
series
Lord.
on the Lord sharp betting versus square betting,
Yeah,
and maybe we'll have him on. But
yeah, we definitely should. Lord Maximus. If you don't follow him on TikTok, you should. He's got some great picks and some really entertaining stuff. It is
he's a,
Lord Maximus is awesome.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, it was good chatting with you, and yeah, we're gonna do this weekly, and
Yeah,
glad you guys could check in, keeping it a little shorter,
yeah.
and gotta walk the dog, and yeah, we're of course on TikTok. We're now, of course, we're on YouTube, so yeah,
All right.
and
Well,
just in the
until
nick of
next time.
time.
Yeah, we'll see you next time, Nick.
See you later, guys.